Hello, everybody, and welcome to my talk on voice. My name is Meg Rosoff, and I'm an American writer living in London. And I started writing quite late in life. And once I started teaching creative writing, I realized that I couldn't teach people to write, but I could teach them to at least try to think properly or to think like a writer. And that's when I started to get this idea about voice. Now, everybody talks about voice, but it's very difficult to actually define what it is. The first question that I usually ask, and the first question that I asked myself when I first started getting sent books by publishers was, why are so many books so dead? I used to think that in order to write a good book, all you had to do was have a good plot and to be able to string a sentence together. So I would pick up books that had been sent to me by publishers, and I would think, well, yes, I'll have a look at this. It's bound to be good. I know the person. They're quite articulate, or I don't know the person, but, you know, it looks beautiful. It's got a good cover. And time after time, I found myself feeling that there was just something missing in the book, and I started thinking of them as zombie books. Now, the thing that really does tend to be missing in a book is a strong voice. The word is misleading, as I've written here. Voice suggests a superficial quality, but it's not a superficial quality. Voice is, in fact, the essence of your personality. It's the clearest expression of your DNA plus a lifetime of experience. So what does the combination of nature and nurture add up to in your head? What you're looking for is the one thing that you can say that nobody else can say. I find this is something that that people don't really have an easy idea thinking about. You go to look at paintings in a gallery, for instance, and you look at the Mona Lisa and you feel nothing. Now, that's always blamed on you. It's your fault. You can't somehow react to the Mona Lisa. But maybe it's the Mona Lisa's fault. Maybe Mona Lisa are not compatible. Maybe the voice of that artist is not a voice that speaks to you. But as an artist, what you need is to have the voice in the first place so that at least you're speaking to somebody. Now, I started thinking about the brain as a colander. And I started to think about how a single day there will be a million experiences, more than a million, a billion experiences. You wake up, you open your eyes, you put your feet on the floor, you go, you have breakfast, a billion million things happen to you, and most of them just go straight through the holes of the colander. You'll never remember them. If I asked you, what were you doing at 7:11 in the morning a week ago Tuesday, chances are you wouldn't be able to tell me. But every once in a while, and really almost every once in a blue moon, something happens in your day, in your life, that gets stuck in the colander and sticks there and may still be in that colander 10 years later, 20 years later, 50 years later. There's a question that therapists ask when you go in. One of the first questions they ask is, what's your first memory? And if you ask people that question just routinely, you get an extraordinary variety of first memories. My first memory, I was very, very young, and it was a dream, and it was a nightmare, in fact. And if you dumped that colander with all the things that stuck in your head out onto a big white table, at any age, at age 11 or 18 or 35 or 60, you would notice that what's in your colander is completely different from what's in the person's next to you's colander, because what's stuck in their brain, even if you had an identical upbringing, will not be remotely the same. And this is why the writing of memoir is so difficult, because I was talking about this the other day, because two people identical twins in a family will have completely different experiences growing up. Even if their DNA is the same, what they observe in life, how they're reacted to by the parents, by the other siblings, by life, will be completely different. Now, one thing I do think is quite interesting is that school, especially in this country, in the UK, is really designed to erase out the individuality, the difference. You know, you're all passing the same exams, you're all wearing the same uniforms, and it's almost as if we have to educate people back into their idiosyncrasies and their faults in a way. You know, you're always told that you have to be good, that you have to be, you know, soft-spoken and polite and, you know, honest and fair dealing and, you know, as if everyone should be the same. And if you happen to have an explosive, passionate, you know, nutty personality, it's often not valued as much. Or if you're not very outgoing, it's often not valued as much. People are always saying, smile, or, you know, why don't you talk up more? But that's what you are. That's what's in your head. And that's what you really need to treasure above all things. So just imagine all these kinds of things. Anybody who's a gardener out there will recognize this. This is all the kind of stuff that's collecting in your brain, and it's composting down into this really rich, dark material. Let's call it material, because when you're writing a book, that's where the book comes from. Another example is my favorite train example. And what I like to do if I've got an actual live audience in front of me is to say, we've got a train that's half a mile long, and everybody here today is sitting in the left-hand window of the train. You're all looking out at the same landscape as it's passing by at speed, and every single person on that trip will notice something different, will take away something different from that trip. So I always say that what I notice is animals. I'll be looking for horses out the window. If I can't find a horse, you know, I would get special extra points for a deer, or if I were in America, a moose. Imagine seeing a moose out the window. I'm always looking for hares in fields, which you can see if you take a train in March or April. You know, you do often see. I once saw 2 boxing hares in a field, and that made my journey absolutely extraordinary. You know, somebody else might be thinking about property, you know, looking at the houses that you pass and saying, oh, I'd quite like to live there, or, oh, I'd really like to have a garden like that. You know, someone else might be looking at trees or looking for birds, or not looking at all. Looking down at the book in their lap, or, you know, at the person sitting across from them on the aisle. But basically, everyone sitting in the same place on the same journey is going to have a different experience. And the quality, the difference between your experience and the experience of the person next to you or the other people in your life is what's going to make your story interesting. Now, if you don't know what's in your colander, if you don't know what's in your head, you need to find out. I was just reading this over this morning, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. Well, it must have been Freud who said that. Dreams are one of the best ways to get into your unconscious mind, because it's the one place where the deep, dark unconscious pokes its way up to the surface. So if you think about it, and a lot of people haven't ever thought about it, if you think about it, the idea that you go to sleep and you shut off your conscious mind, and suddenly your brain is telling you stories. And it's not telling you kind of normal stories. It's not saying, you know, when you go to work tomorrow, you might want to think about cleaning your desk. It's saying, there's a deer in a tree, and but the deer has wings, and I don't know why the deer is. Then suddenly I go up to the deer to talk to it, and it flies off. And people don't seem to kind of recognize how completely peculiar it is that
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.